6 years and still no promotion? Maybe you're just not leadership material. My stepbrother Mark laughed across the boardroom table. Dad didn't even look up from his coffee. You should be grateful to have a job at all, Emily. The words hit like a slap. Everyone else in the room went quiet. Investors, assistants, even the janitor pretending to mop. I kept my face still, my pulse louder than the air conditioner. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Hart. I'm 32. And if you think blood makes you family, you've never worked for mine. 4 years I built my father's empire from spreadsheets, midnight calls and half-finished dinners. I was the silent engine while Mark partied through business school. Every client knew me by name, every deal passed through my hands, yet every Christmas Dad would toast to the future so my boy Mark. Do you know the feeling when the people who raised you act like you're the intern in your own story? That morning the betrayal wasn't sudden, it was official. Dad slid the announcement letter across the table. Congratulations, Mark, Chief Executive Officer. My pen trembled as I signed the handover form, pretending it was just paperwork and not my dignity bleeding onto the page. After the meeting I stood by the glass window overlooking downtown. The skyline I'd helped light up with our projects. The city didn't know the power shift that had just happened in the 24th floor conference room. But I did. Mark came up beside me, still grinning. Don't worry, sis. You can stay on, you're good with numbers. I'll handle the vision. I looked at his reflection in the glass, his cheap confidence, his expensive suit. You'll need all the vision you can get, I said softly. He laughed, thinking I'd surrendered. But in that silence, something inside me stopped breaking and started sharpening. Outside, the glass towers mirrored the sun, and for the first time I didn't see his company. I saw my next move. I didn't quit that day. I smiled, showed up, and worked like a ghost, haunting my own legacy. Mark strutted around in designer suits, quoting leadership books he barely understood. Dad called him the future, and I handled the damage control after every foolish decision he made. One night, while fixing another one of Mark's budget disasters, I got an email that made me stop breathing. A consulting inquiry from Kramer Industries, our biggest competitor. The subject line read, "Confidential offer. Urgent advisory role." I almost deleted it. Loyalty, pride, fear, they all screamed at me. But then I remembered Dad saying, "You should be grateful to have a job." Gratitude had become a leash. So I opened it. They wanted me to oversee strategic restructuring, 5 times my current pay, full creative control, remote work. No hand-holding, no hierarchy. Just trust. The next morning I walked into the office and watched Mark give a presentation using my old slide deck. He misread his own numbers. The investors looked confused. Dad clapped anyway. That was the moment I said yes to Kramer. Quietly. At night I drafted my resignation letter. Polite, clean, cold. Then I deleted it. I wasn't ready to leave empty-handed. I wanted to watch what they built without me. Kramer's CEO, a sharp woman named Dana, called me personally. "Emily, I've seen your work. You don't need a seat at someone else's table. You build the tables." For the first time in years I felt seen, not as a daughter or a backup plan, but as the architect of my own future. When I signed that NDA, I didn't realize I was signing the first line of their downfall. Because every blueprint I'd ever designed for Dad's company was still in my head, and now I was building something sharper, cleaner, smarter, on the other side. And the best part? They didn't even notice I was already gone. The day I started with Kramer, the air even smelled different. Clean. Focused. Nobody questioned my decisions or asked for Dad's approval first. Dana handed me a blank whiteboard and said, "Draw the future." So I did. Leaner teams, smarter logistics, modern client engagement. It wasn't personal, it was survival, until Dad made it personal again. 2 months later, our company's biggest client shifted to Kramer. I didn't poach them, they found me. "Emily," the client said, "you were always the brains. We're just following the results." The news hit the industry like a quiet explosion. At home, Mark called. His tone wasn't mocking anymore. "Hey can you maybe drop by? Dad wants to talk." I almost laughed. For years I'd begged for that sentence. Now it arrived when they were bleeding contracts. When I walked into the building, the receptionist looked nervous. The lobby, once filled with trophies and champagne, was silent. Even the elevator lights flickered. Dad stood by his desk, hands clasped behind his back. Mark looked pale. "Emily," Dad began, "we may have underestimated your value. Perhaps you could come back as senior advisor. 5 years late, I said softly. He smiled tightly. We can offer you a competitive raise. I met his eyes. Kramer pays me 5 times that. And they don't treat me like I'm a guest in my own ideas. Mark shifted uncomfortably. We didn't mean to. You meant every word, I interrupted. You just didn't think I'd survive without you. Dad's face hardened. You'd turn on your own family? I looked at the empire collapsing behind him. No, Dad. You turned on me first. I walked out quietly. The security guard opened the door like I was royalty. Outside, the wind hit my face, cold and alive. I didn't feel revenge. I felt release. But something told me, their fall had only just begun. The headlines came first. Hart Group loses 2 major contracts to Kramer Industries. Then the calls started. Investors, suppliers, even old friends of Dad's asking if it was true. By week's end, the market whispers turned into open panic. From my apartment window, I could see their tower across downtown. The same 24th floor where I used to stand behind Mark while he fumbled through presentations. Now that floor was dark at noon. Meetings canceled. Payroll delayed. The news cycle was merciless. Dana called me in with her usual calm smile. You warned them about overexpansion, she said. They didn't listen. I nodded. They never do. Kramer Industries was booming. The strategies I'd built in secret, flexible contracts, data integration, sustainability reforms, had doubled our profit margin. Every move I made to grow this place seemed to shake my father's foundation a little more. So I didn't celebrate. I worked. Quietly, precisely. Then one night my phone buzzed with a familiar number. That I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Emily, his voice cracked. Mark's not doing well. He's overwhelmed. We've had layoffs. We might lose the building. I closed my eyes. The irony was sharp. I'd begged for resources, innovation, respect. All refused. Now he begged for rescue. Dad, I said softly, you built a company that couldn't run without the person you refused to promote. Silence. Then a whisper, please, help us. I wanted to feel power. Dad, I felt pity. I can't, I said finally. Conflict of interest. When the call ended, I sat in the dark, the city lights flickering across my face. There's a strange ache in watching justice arrive too slowly, like watching a storm form over the sea you warned them about years ago. Across the skyline, their building flickered again, and then floor by floor the lights went out. 2 weeks later, I was in a strategy session at Kramer when Dana slid her phone toward me. The caller ID read Hart Group. She raised an eyebrow. Should I take a message? I stared at it. No, I said, put it on speaker. Dad's voice came through, low and careful. Emily, sweetheart. We'd like to discuss a partnership. Perhaps we can merge resources. Our companies complement each other. Dana smiled faintly, eyes never leaving me. Mr. Hart, she said, with respect, you don't have resources left to merge. There was silence. Then Dad sighed. Emily, please. We need your expertise. We're struggling. Something inside me twisted, not with joy but with disbelief. For years I'd begged for a chance. Now they begged for my help. Dad, I said softly, you used to tell me business isn't personal. So let's keep it that way. Mark's voice cut in suddenly, sharp and defensive. You think you're better than us? You got lucky. Luck. I interrupted. Luck didn't keep your lights on for 6 years. I did. Dana muted the call. Her tone was gentle but firm. You don't owe them anything. I nodded. I know. But I owe myself closure. That night I drove past their old office. The parking lot was empty, the lights off. The logo, once bright gold, now half broken and flickering. I remembered my first day there, wearing an oversized blazer and hope-like armor. Now I watched from my car as 2 movers carried out boxes labeled archives. I didn't cry. I just whispered, this is what happens when you build castles on someone else's back. My phone buzzed again. Another email, a new international client referred by the one Dad had lost. The subject line read, we want the woman who made the impossible look effortless. For the first time in my life, that woman was me. A month later, I received a formal envelope embossed with gold trim. It was from the City Business Alliance Gala, the same event where Dad once introduced Mark as the heir to the Hart Empire. Inside was an invitation signed by the board chair herself. We'd be honored to have Emily Hart, senior consultant at Kramer Industries, as our keynote speaker. I read it twice. Then I laughed. The universe had a sense of humor. At the gala, the chandeliers glimmered like frost. The ballroom buzzed with reporters and CEOs I used to fetch coffee for. Now they greeted me with handshakes and admiration. Dana stood beside me, sleek and confident. "You ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." Halfway through the night I saw them, Dad and Mark, at the back of the room. They looked smaller somehow, like time had stripped their arrogance down to silence. Mark's suit hung loose, his confidence gone. Dad's eyes darted to me, then away. When I took the stage, the room hushed. 6 years ago, I worked for a company that told me loyalty was more valuable than leadership. I believed them, until I realized loyalty without respect is just servitude. A murmur spread through the audience. Cameras flashed. "I stand here not to boast," I continued, "but to remind every woman who's ever been told to wait her turn. Sometimes your turn only comes when you stop asking for permission." Applause thundered through the hall. I saw Dad lower his gaze. Mark looked like he wanted to vanish. Afterward, a reporter asked, "Do you have a message for your old company?" I smiled. "Yes. Tell them I'm grateful. They trained me for the job I have now." Later, as I left the gala, a drizzle fell over the city. The streets shimmered with reflected light. I tilted my face upward. It wasn't rain I felt, it was freedom. That night I slept peacefully for the first time in 6 years. But the story wasn't done yet. Because the next morning, they showed up at my office. They were waiting in the lobby when I arrived. My father, Mark, and 2 desperate-looking board members. Their suits were immaculate, but their eyes told the truth. Exhaustion, panic, fear. The receptionist glanced at me nervously. "They said it's urgent." "I'm sure it is," I replied calmly. Dad stood when I approached. "Emily, please, can we talk privately?" "No need," I said. "Transparency's a company policy here." He hesitated, then exhaled. "We're losing everything. The investors have pulled out. Mark's health is suffering. We need your help to stabilize before liquidation." I studied them. These men who once laughed while I begged for recognition. "You want me to save what you refused to share." "Emily," Mark whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how hard it was. I thought you were just jealous." For a moment the apology almost broke something in me. Then I remembered every night I stayed late fixing his messes, every time Dad called me emotional for caring too much. "You thought wrong," I said quietly. Dad tried one last card. "You're my daughter. You'll let your family drown." I looked around Kramer's polished offices, the clean glass walls, the team that trusted me, the life I built without their approval. "I already have a family," I said softly. "One that doesn't use my worth as leverage." His shoulders sagged. "Is there truly nothing I can say?" "There is," I said. "Thank you for denying me my promotion. Without that, I'd never have built something of my own." He blinked, stunned. Mark looked down at the floor. I turned to leave, pausing just long enough to add, "You taught me everything about business, just not the lesson you intended." As the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of them through the narrowing gap. 2 men realizing too late that the empire they tried to protect had been built by the woman they dismissed. And now it was hers by destiny, not permission. A month later, news broke that Hart Group had officially filed for bankruptcy. The same papers that once published Dad's triumphs now ran the headline. "Former family empire falls. Ex-employee now industry leader." I didn't gloat. I just sat at my desk, sipping coffee, watching the morning light spill through Kramer's glass walls. Dana stepped in quietly and placed a file on my table. "They've requested one last meeting," she said. I hesitated. Then I nodded. When I arrived at the small cafe, Dad was already there. No suit this time, just a worn gray sweater. Mark sat beside him, silent, humbled. He stood when he saw me. "Emily, we lost everything." I took a breath. "No, Dad. You lost control. That's different." He looked down at his hands. "I never realized how much of this company came from you." "You didn't want to," I replied. "It's easier to take credit for something you didn't build than to admit you built it wrong." For a long moment none of us spoke. The city hummed outside. Taxis, wind, the rhythm of life moving on. Finally, Dad whispered, "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words should have come 6 years earlier. But hearing them now didn't hurt. Gist freed me. I know, I said softly. That's why I came. To tell you I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Then I wish you peace. I stood. I already have it. As I walked out, the cold air brushed my face. Light, sharp, alive. The street smelled of rain and roasted coffee. Across the skyline, Kramer's tower gleamed in the morning sun. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket and opened the email draft I'd been holding onto. Resignation from consulting. Then I typed one last line beneath it. Starting my own firm. Because this story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice. And for the first time it finally felt like mine.